Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
I offer my personal welcome to this
Nemo
and Co Conference
halftime
show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nemo and Co Conference halftime show. We're almost there. We're almost at the end. It was a pretty decent session of conference, so we're going to take a look at it. I am joined today, though, for this session of conference by none other than the ruthless heathen herself, Ruth Heath.
Hello.
How are you? You doing well?
Hello. I'm fine. I'm here just to balance the numbers. We've only had one woman this conference session, so
Yes.
I am token
women.
female. Four women in
overall.
total.
Yeah.
Okay.
And speaking of numbers, speaking of counting, everyone's favorite thing, we're going to have first Jesus, Joe, or Russell. There we go. There we go. We've got 46 for Jesus, 3 for Russell, and then we're looking at 40 for Russell, 3 for Joe, 46 for Jesus. Help if I could read, wouldn't it? So it's actually quite a tight race. Joe got a couple of mentions this session. And then if we look at Jesus, Joe, or Dallin, it is not quite such a close race. Joe actually catching up to Dallin, and if he were to overtake him, I think Dallin would be incredibly upset. I have no evidence for that, just a hunch. What were your thoughts on this session, Ruth?
You know what? It has been. I don't tune in a lot to church stuff, and it was word salad. There was a lot of it that I was just listening to it thinking, oh my goodness, I've heard this same talk 6 billion times previously. Yep. And obviously I haven't, but that's how it feels, having stepped away and then listening to it again, and just those trite phrases that get trotted out. If I had to sum it up, I would say this is the one where we want to talk about people being blind and now seeing. There was a lot of the same sort of references, metaphors in there throughout.
Almost like these sessions have themes that they've all agreed on before.
Yes. And it makes me wonder whether, obviously we didn't know when Nelson was going to pass, but we do know that he'd recently gone blind.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of quoting him. And I'm thinking, was that all set up to reference the fact that he's gone blind, and we're going to quote about blind people in a conference, if he was still the living prophet, and then they've just kept the material and just run with it, even though he's passed away. That'd
be something, wouldn't it? That would be something. I do honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. We will throw the PowerPoint slides up here. Now, people, I will warn you in advance. I've been having some help this year. Peter Bleakley's been helping me prep these slides, and I do not know exactly what is written on them. I will not be held responsible for whatever you might see when these slides end up on screen. Just want that abundantly clear now. That is Peter Bleakley's responsibility. So with that caveat out of the way, and hopefully out of any legal trouble he may cause me, here we go. We have Dallin H. Oakes conducting this session. We had the Tabernacle Choir, and we played our favorite game again, Ruth. Played a game of Where's Jim? Where's Jim Bennett? Jim Bennett is right there. See him? Just that little red circle there. Oh, you can't see him? That's all right. He's right there. You got a much better view of him. There, right at the back, because he's a tall man.
He'd get more of a shot if he grew a moustache, because they seem to like to zoom in on people with facial hair or of different nationalities than white American. They seem to like to favour as well.
Indeed. But it's all right. Jim Bennett, we love to see him get some airtime in the broadcast. Proof that he is, in fact, in the Tabernacle Choir. There he is. The opening prayer was Chi Hong San Wong, General Authority 70, is currently serving in the Philippines area. And then we started with the talk by Jeffrey R. Holland. This was an interesting talk. Any initial thoughts, Ruth, before I jump through the slides?
Well, it's always interesting because it's always kind of, can we guess what the title will be when it's in the end sign? And I'm going to go with the colonoscopy of truth, because he talked about the rod of safety for his soul and it being penetrating and illuminating. And I just thought, Wow, yeah. Go on then. that might help with some of your health issues. I don't know. Maybe they'll win with a different title.
Colonoscopy of truth. I don't know that it would get past correlation somehow. You know what I mean?
Possibly not.
I'd struggle to get that one past.
Yeah, that is a very old photograph of him. He does not look that pink-cheeked anymore, and he looked quite frail and unwell. And yeah.
A spoiler by Doug Vincent. Jeffrey R. Holland sung the Evangelical National Anthem in conference, which he sang Amazing Grace. We'll get to it towards the end of his talk. But yeah, Amazing Grace is in the hymn book. That and This Little Light of Mine, a couple of ones. In fact, Amazing Grace got some airtime in an earlier session of this conference. It's getting a lot of mentions. So yeah, he talked about the blind man seeing. He acknowledged the tragedy in Michigan, and he also acknowledged tragedies almost daily around the world. Just lest we forget that gun violence is a problem on most days in the United States, and around the rest of the world. There are other tragedies.
Yeah, I thought it maybe should have warranted less than a sentence.
I'm hoping that what we're going to get is Dan H. Oaks speak to it properly. Or more fully, I should say, because the leader of the church, as its most senior leader, he does owe it to the members of the church to speak out about this and about this issue, because it's affected his flock, his people.
Yeah.
So we would really expect him to say something. So hopefully that's what we'll get. He, in his talk, kept talking about how grateful we are for evidence. And if we want to get into the epistemology of this talk, we would get deep into what actually is evidence and why the things that he's saying are evidence aren't really evidence. They're just assertions that he's making, or he's asserting connections that aren't evidenced in and of themselves. Your thoughts on this idea of the evidence he was providing?
Yes, he does this a lot. And there's this sleight of hand where he'll say, we're grateful for the evidence, and then it's the vitriol. I get attacked. I get this. I get that, and he gets quite frothy and worked up about it all. But actually, no, people aren't attacking you. They're saying, "Well, please provide some evidence. Show us how that actually looks." Because when he gets into it and he says, "I know," it then devolves into because I feel. And
Car's saying the evidence is trust me, bro, and it was giving me a lot of trust me, bro, energy. Also, to your point that you were making there, that he kind of he plays this sort of game and then starts to get offended. It's like he's getting offended at the idea that people don't just believe him automatically, and it speaks to the bubble that these men live in, because most of the time when they're interacting with church members and other people in church, there is just this stuff. There is this underlying current in which they swim, which is people just believe them. People believe what they say. And people should take them at face value. And then you go outside of people that have got that cognitive preloading to just believe what apostles say. And they're like, okay, well, then give me the evidence. He's like, oh, well, they're saying things about the translation process of the Book of Mormon, which we'll get to that.
So it's really interesting, isn't it? Because obviously he's a very elderly man now. And when you think of the lifespan of the church, compared to where he sits age-wise, he's been around for a good percentage of the lifespan of the church, and he will know that those sort of origin myths of the church have altered over his lifespan, and what he's been asked to talk from the pulpit has altered over his lifespan in positions of authority. So when he then says, I've read books, I've been attacked by unbelievers, criticisms have been hurled at me, it's also very physical, as if he's been in a battle, as if he's physically been harmed by people, when he hasn't. People have held him accountable for the things that he has said, and he has borne testimony of assertions that he's made. And actually, some other books, let's talk about Fawn Brodie, let's talk about books produced by the Tanners, whose truths, whose actual facts, the church now says are the origin stories of Mormonism, and accept as truth. he would have been one of the people saying, they're attacking me, they're lying, they're trying to pull me down, and seeing those criticisms as being hurled at him in that time and place. And I understand it hurts his heart to feel attacked in that way, but it's not a physical attack on you, Jeff. It is people holding you accountable and saying, show us the receipts. How can this add up to that if this is the facts?
And he gave a similar sort of response to John Sweeney when John Sweeney was just being a journalist and pressing him on some of his claims. He resorts to this, I've read a few books and I'd like to think that you look at me and don't think this guy looks like a dodo, right? Or you would have enough respect for me to think I'm not a dodo. Like, this idea that he's calling into question the level of respect someone has for him because they're daring to question his assertions shows the level of sort of intellectual privilege he lives with day to day. He gets to say, well, I've read a book. I love books. I've read a few books. You know, you should listen to me. I know stuff. And then when people question him on what he knows, he just takes it as a personal insult rather than that sort of thing.
Whereas the cleverest people are often those ones that are very compassionate with how they share their knowledge, and are the ones that can sit back and don't feel like they have to prove how clever they are by saying, look at all the books I've read, look at this, look at that, aren't I clever, look at all my degrees, certificates up on the wall. They can say, actually, I know this stuff so well, I can walk you through it. I can show you how to understand the information that I've come to understand, and I can break it down for you. I love listening to really good scientists make it seem really easy to understand, and I know it's not, but they're so knowledgeable that actually explaining it then becomes very easy.
Because Holland could point back to his education. He has got higher education, but that doesn't mean anything. That's a sort of shorthand, but you have to be able to justify that by your ability to actually explain these things and to justify your positions. So he referenced doing ordinances for the dead to bless them too, and he called that evidence, but we have no proof that it works. It's faith, and faith is fine, but it's not evidence of the truthfulness of the church that we focus so much on the dead. He made a quote about only our church does that, and that's the sort of evidence there. Here's a little video for us all to watch.
Earlier criticism has been hurled at me that the means by which this book came were impractical.
It's talking about the Book of Mormon.
Unbelievable, embarrassing, even unholy. Now that's harsh language from anyone who presumes to know the means by which I know and by which the book came to be, inasmuch as the only description given about those means is that it was translated, quote, by the gift and power of God, close quote. That's it. That's all.
That's the only description of the means by which the Book of Mormon was translated. Is that just true at all? No. Go on the church's website. Look at the Book of Mormon translation. There's more description to its process and to how it happened and to what instruments were involved and to who the scribes were and all that sort of stuff. There's far more than just, well, it was translated by the gift and power of God and that's all we know. We know so much more. And he's trying to paint it as though, no, the only description we've ever been given, the only thing you should actually think about when it comes to the translation of the Book of Mormon is to say, well, it was translated by the gift and power of God. He's trying to create a thought-terminating cliche to stop people looking into this issue. The thing that, as WWHVD said, South Park figured out years ago, South Park put out into the world years ago. Sells in the comments saying that's not the only description. Quite right. The church has on their own website multiple descriptions of the event, multiple witnesses to the translation. And they will point to those witnesses when they're trying to bolster the translation in other settings, right? They'll point to the different accounts and say, look, here's what the people who were in the room said. Russell M. Nelson, he's dead now, so he's a dead prophet, so what he says doesn't really matter. But he spoke about the version of the translation of the Book of Mormon as it's found in An Address to All Believers in Christ, that pamphlet. He's spoken about it publicly, and that says more than just it was translated by the gift and power of God. So I don't get why Jeffrey R. Holland's lying about this. Ruth? Sorry,
as I say, I know I know what I was taught as a convert, as a teenager. I know that I was taught Urim and Thummim. I know that I've still got those pastoral pamphlets with the explanation, the breakdown of how it happened, that Moroni came, that he was told he had to wait, and this, that, and the other, and all these things had to happen. And actually, when you break it down now, you realize, hey, none of it needed to happen. If Moroni can appear miraculously, Moroni didn't even need to bother scribing it, but way back when. Moroni could have just rocked up in the 1800s and said, grab your notebook, Joe. I've got a story to tell you. He didn't need to engrave it on plates and hide it in a hill and run with plates, from people chasing him. None of that needed to happen.
With £60, a 3-mile run with £60 plates, I believe.
Exactly. None of that needed to happen. Moroni just could have come and said, I'll sit over here and you sit over there and you write this down as I tell you what I'm, all these stories that I need to tell you about. None of it needed to happen how it did. But you suspend your disbelief and you take it on trust. I did as a convert. Okay, we've got these magic spectacles, this Urim and Thummim. We've got a breastplate, we've got a sword, all of these things hidden in a box along with the plates. Took it on trust, and now we're getting, well, actually there's some folk magic involved. Well, actually there was a magic rock that he had from somebody else, and he would put it in his top hat and he'd put his head in the hat, and Russell Nelson showed us what that looked like, showed the primary children what that looked like. Now that was not the version of events that I was taught. In fact, I was taught to argue with people that gave that version of events and tell them they were liars.
Yeah,
and
this anti-Mormon.
Holland would have been one of those people telling me to tell the other people they're lying about our church. They're attacking your religion, Ruth, by saying those things. And now, full turnaround. No, now that's the truth.
I know through accounts of individuals who have been told directly by Holland when they were missionaries, they were told that the claim Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon by a peep stone or by a seer stone in a hat was anti-Mormon lies. He's told people that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
certainly, as far as I've been told by those individuals who heard it from him. So I have no reason to doubt them.
And I appreciate he's a really old man, and maybe he's lived a very sheltered existence. But to have people ask questions about something that is a massive life decision, to join a religion, to set in place things that will alter your own trajectory and your family's trajectory, you darn well better ask the right questions. You darn well better probe into that and say, well, okay, how does this work and how does that work? That isn't being attacked. That's saying, well, you used to say this 30 years ago and now you're saying that. How does that work? If he feels that that's people attacking him, or South Park putting out some sort of description of what the church claims to be the truth is being attacked. It's not. It's people holding it up to the light and saying, does this seem plausible? Does this seem logical? I don't know.
Now, yeah. I think he is playing the age card. As you said, he's saying he's 2 months away from his 85th birthday. And he's walked with kings and prophets, with presidents and prophets and apostles. I trust that my witness should be given at least some consideration here.
Which king? Which kings has he walked with? Just wondered.
Not our boy Charles. But yeah, it's this idea. He's playing. It's the appeal to authority.
It absolutely is. And do you notice it's a claim to male authority as well? Just saying.
No women.
No women.
Jacob Opstad makes a very good point. Being analysed is not being attacked. Yeah. If you're out there making claims, then people have a right to kind of speak to them. He seems to give a sort of final witness every conference at the moment.
Yes, he does.
That feeling, right? Because it's like everyone's going to be his last. And we'll see that with Eyring later as well. He kind of gives this idea that, he is on his last day. I've fought a good fight. I've run the race, etc. But he did sing Amazing Grace. It's kind of touching.
Did you think so?
Did
you think so?
A little bit.
I think I was still reeling at that point because he talked about being huddled on the streets of Jerusalem. And I was thinking, whoa, if you're going to talk about the Middle East, there's a whole situation we can talk about, but I don't think you really want to go there. And then he segued into singing Amazing Grace, and we all go, "Oh, Grandpa, nice."
Yeah, and
good
that
try."
it worked on me a little bit. Not gonna lie, I'll own it. It did. And James E. Evanson, our next speaker, really kind of had a good effect on me. I quite liked his talk. Do you have any initial thoughts before we talk about him?
I've not come across this guy before. Have you? Is this someone you already know? Is this his?
How that works.
Is this his newbie talk? Is he fresh
could well
to the
be,
role?
actually. Could be.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
So again, another blind man story, which was interesting, and lots about service. And I thought what was interesting, and he tried his best, but what was interesting was it was one of those ones where it was kind of, oh no, you're not, you're really pretty actually, you've really tried hard actually, haven't you? It was a sweet spirit talk, because he was saying to service missionaries, that counts too, that's still a good mission too. The fact that you have to say it, James, possibly means you don't really think it in your heart.
I don't know. I took this really differently. So this is quite interesting. And I don't disagree with you. I can see where that interpretation comes from. I took it differently. I quite like this because it seemed like he was speaking to the membership of the church when he said, if you have a family member who's been called as a service missionary, don't go thinking that's a second-class thing. He's not talking to the missionaries themselves. He's talking to the families and saying, don't go treating them like they didn't quite get in.
But why does he need to say that?
Because the emphasis that the leaders above him have put in is that young men should serve a 2-year proselytizing mission. And that
because in the past, a service mission was seen as a second-class mission.
It was. And I think it's a good thing that he's normalizing them. He talks about missionaries being like good Samaritans. He described examples of service missionaries and how we can all serve the one. That's good. I really appreciated his uplift of service missionaries.
Yeah.
He said explicitly, you are not second-class missionaries. And to your point, Ruth, why does he have to say that? Because that's how they've been treated. But I wonder whether the increased focus on service missionaries is to increase the visible church charitable activity.
Well, I think he made a point. He said there was 3 things. I can't remember what all 3 of them was, but the first one was, well, the reason we do service missions is because then it will, bring the church's name up. And you're like, oh no, that is not why you help people. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be assigned to help people. As now sitting in the ex-Mormon space, I don't need to be assigned to help people. I can just jolly well go out and help people, and I do, and we do as a family. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be a service project. But yeah, I remember when our eldest was on his mission, and the things that he felt the most passionate about, that he actually made a difference, was when they were doing service, putting up fences, helping with, they'd had a flood in that area of Canada that he was in at the time, and cleaning out schools and things like that. That was where, as an 18-year-old, he really felt like, I'm actually making a difference here. So yeah, absolutely, let's go out and serve, but let's take the name tags off and just go as human beings out to help people. And if they happen to ask, hey, are you religious at all? We can have a conversation, but why not just be helpful people in the world? Exactly.
And that's all I really got for that guy's talk, to be honest. That's kind of all there really was to it. Did you have anything else?
No, just that I thought it was a little bit dangerous where he said there's really kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, but really there's no excuse not to be a missionary now, despite your health, financial situation, all of those sorts of things. And I just thought, we're very good about not allowing people to have boundaries or know their own health or situation and say, actually, that's not for me. By creating this service mission, it's kind of saying, hey, no one's got any excuse, which will then create another layer of pressure on people.
Right. Okay. Which sometimes people just want to be able to step back and not feel that they have to get involved.
Yeah.
Because there's a time and season for everything. Right. Suarez. Suarez was talking about how firm is your spiritual foundation. Was asking that question, and his entire talk was kind of about temperance, which made me wonder if certain Mormon apologist YouTube channels were listening to this talk, because it seemed very sort of pointed at individuals who maybe dislike this kind of attitude that Christ taught. The idea that, you know, he was about temperance, although we talk about temperance in all things, not being a striker unless there are money changes in the temple, then maybe. But yeah, temperance stands out as a precious fruit of the spirit, of wisdom and calmness. Should be temperate in all things. Temperance is essential for the faithful. It harmonizes and strengthens other Christ-like attributes, including whipping money changes if necessary, which we have here. And that creates arguments about this idea of niceness culture, and I'm not going to feed into that. But he did quote Martin Luther King Jr. What did you think of that, Ruth?
I was just absolutely shocked because Martin Luther King Jr. was a fantastic proponent of change and doing it in a way that was not violent, but he was trying to change a system. And do you know what? The church at the time could have supported Martin Luther King. It's really easy in 2025 to quote him and pat yourself on the back for quoting him. But how about stand beside him back in the 60s when the civil rights movement was happening? I don't think we're on the right side of that as an organisation.
Or whatever.
And I don't think if we look around, we're on the right side of a lot of, as an organisation, I don't think the church is on the right side of a lot of situations that are unfolding around the world. And maybe they could say to themselves, hey, maybe in sort of 60 years' time, we'll be quoting these people as if we stood beside them at the time. Maybe we could align ourselves with them now. Maybe we could do the right thing now.
That'd be prophetic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To realise what side of history you may end up on. But, you know, maybe not. It was nice, though, to at least hear him quoted now. So I was taught the Saviour's ministry on earth was marked by consistently being calm, but it's not the whole picture or example he set. He was assertive.
That's a little bit of Peter in there, and I like it.
Peter there, yeah.
Yes, but he's absolutely right to draw that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The reason Jesus was in trouble with the Pharisees of the time was because he wasn't playing nice and saying the things that made it easy for them. He was challenging them, and he was doing it in a not in a violent way, but he was challenging them. So yeah, this niceness culture doesn't mean I just say things that are comfortable for you. I say the things that are maybe challenging to you as well, and you have to sit with it. And that doesn't seem to, that sort of culture of rhetoric and discussion doesn't seem to be one that the church deals with. Oaks particularly, Nemo, and yeah, as your experience has shown.
Yes. Yeah, me and Oaks. What a story. Peter M. Johnson was our next speaker. And he was an interesting fellow to have speak, particularly because he announced on Facebook that he was going to be speaking. He announced it on Facebook a few days before conference that he would be speaking in the 10 a.m. session on October the 5th. Share a message about the power of Jesus Christ and ministering to the one. And that was, his message. He started out by saying the second coming is on its way. He quoted Nelson. In fact, he would win the PBK award for this session, which I've not been consistently awarding. But the man who kissed up to the ghost of Russell M. Nelson the most would be Peter Johnson in this session. I believe he quoted him 5 times. But yeah, he talked about his mission and the things he learned, and he was a convert. Talking about the woman at the well.
Yes,
let's go there first. Yep.
Yeah, he's talking about it in terms of helping other people and whatever, and then goes on to talk about going to the temple. And I'm just sat there thinking, but you know what? Jesus went and helped her when she was alive. He didn't wait until she was dead to go and help her in the temple. And he also, this whole, she's got 5 previous husbands. She's probably living in sin. That was at a time when she probably couldn't live on her own. It was, you had to live with somebody. So who are you to judge if her customs in Samaria were different to the customs of the Jewish people of the time? It was just such a strange one. But this whole ministering to the one, boy, did he say that a fair few times. And to the point that I started to feel like it doesn't have any meaning anymore. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? It's obviously meaning something to him, but he's not explaining what he means by that. And I think what he means is you see people as an individual. Well, if you're going to see them as an individual, then you really, really need to be focusing on what their needs are, not what you think their needs are.
And really understanding their position. And that might mean hearing things about your own church that you don't like and that you aren't necessarily comfortable hearing. But the church isn't going to teach those skills to its members, which means that this ministering to the one effort is going to ultimately be in vain, I would think.
Yeah.
Because they're not adequately preparing their members to engage with people who know things about the church that those members don't, which it's 2025. The church should, it's incredibly easy for the church to make sure everyone just knows this stuff, but they still don't know it. And we'll see an example of that in a minute. But your thoughts, sorry, Ruth.
Yeah, he talked about, the disciples in Jesus's time not having any money, but having the ability to bless a lame man so that he could walk. And I was thinking we actually have the exact opposite of that now, which is the church has a lot of money. The disciples of, the apostles have a lot of money at their disposal, but don't seem to have any ability to do anything miraculous in the same way as making a lame man walk. And
they might be able to find your lost car keys at a push.
And I just feel like I'm not going to cancel my AA membership on that promise, to be honest. I'll keep that still in place. And I don't want to be one of those people that says, well, you've got to prove yourself an apostle by doing something miraculous, but don't pat yourself on the back and say, we have all of this power, we have all of this power, and align yourselves with the Jesus' disciples who were simple people with no money and nothing to their name, but claimed this divine power and claimed that these things happened. Don't align yourself with them. If you have the money and the wealth to do good things and you don't do good things, and you also don't use supposedly your ability to do miracles to actually do miracles.
Well, what's the scripture? He who sins against the greater light receives the greater condemnation. You could absolutely apply the same principle. He who fails to act with greater means receives greater condemnation. If you've got large means to act and to do good, you are going to be judged more harshly. If you don't, then, well, I mean, it's the story of the widow's mite. In essence, the widow gave more of what she had than the rich people who gave more actual money because she was giving more of what she had. Similarly, the church with all its money, they are like the rich people just dropping little tokens in the face of the widow and her mite.
Yeah,
I'm not saying the church should make itself destitute, but there is far more they could give. And if it's a problem of how to distribute that money and how to make that money actually work, then what they can spend the money on is creating systems through which that money can then be effective. They have the power to change the landscape of charitable work in the world. Massively.
Hugely. And he then segues on to talk about how the church is necessary to prepare us for the second coming. So, and that I always think is a cop out, because that means then we don't have to be tender towards people with their physical needs in this life, if we're just going to focus on the next life anyway. All we've got to do is get them to the temple, and concentrate on that side of things, rather than worrying about dealing with their temporal needs and some of the dreadful things that are happening all around the world. We could be such a force for good, and we choose not to be.
He served, Mark Johnson served as a missionary a year after his baptism at the age of 19, so at 20. And during his mission, discovered for the first time about the church's history of denying black people temple ordinances. So about feelings of anger, confusion, doubt, fear, etc. I've got the clip. Thank you, Peter, for writing it out, but I've got the clip right here.
Yeah.
There has been moments in my life where I too have felt unimportant, alone, discouraged, and unseen. I have felt as if I did not belong. I was baptized and confirmed a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when I was 19 years old. 1 year later, I accepted a call to serve as a full-time missionary, but there was much I had not yet learned about church history. Early in my missionary service, I learned that there was a period that those of Black African descent were not allowed to enjoy all of the blessings of worshiping in the house of the Lord. Learning this for the first time brought feelings of anger, confusion, doubt, and fear. These feelings were so intense that my ability to recognize the Holy Ghost was lost for a season.
Now, I want to say to that he talked about there's much he hadn't learned about church history. And then I learned that there was a period in which, now, that's very interesting wording, because he was a missionary at 20, which I've looked up when he was born. That would have been 1986. The ban was only lifted 8 years earlier. So his use of the term church history and his use of the term, a period, makes it sound like it was a lot earlier than it actually was.
Yeah.
During his lifetime, when he was
Oh,
born,
yeah.
the ban
So
was
I was baptized in 88, so it was 10 years, and there was no talk of it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no talk of it at all. There was racism, but I didn't understand where that racism was rooted in.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no talk of that had been the situation. And that's how quickly things can or were hidden, and pushed under the rug, and lesson manuals rewritten and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That stuff just disappeared, and this is the new normal.
So
yeah, I really feel for him. That's an awful thing to go through as a missionary.
Yeah. He's there meant to be teaching people about the church, and he realizes there's a massive part of the church, and he tries to minimize it in his discussion of it now, like I said. But at that time, he realizes there is something big that he didn't know, and it affected him personally as a Black man. Now, the way he fixed it was because his companion was nice to him, it would seem, which doesn't seem to actually then... What he's done is the typical thing we see in conference time and time again. If they even mention a controversial topic or an issue, if they don't just refer to it as questions or doubts or any of those things, if they actually mention something specific, like the ban on... Now, what did he call it, actually? What did he call it specifically? Do you remember? Denying Black people temple ordinances, is that what it said?
Yeah, and that is so not everything that it encompasses.
I'm going to grab it because I just want to check actually how he referred to it, because that's really important. Right, let's put that back on stage.
There have alone. I did not belong. I was baptized and confirmed a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when I was 19 years old. 1 year later, I accepted a call to serve as a full-time missionary, but there was much I had not yet learned about church history. Early in my missionary service, I learned that there was a period that those of Black African descent were not allowed to enjoy all of the blessings of worshiping in the house of the Lord.
Okay, we're not allowed to enjoy all the blessings of worshiping in the house of the Lord. So he didn't mention the fact that they weren't allowed to hold the priesthood. But at least he is mentioning that it's not just a priesthood ban, it's a ban on the salvific ordinances of the temple. Although again, when he says all of the blessings of the house of the Lord, what blessings of the house of the Lord were they allowed to enjoy? There were none. So he's trying to couch this in terms that make it seem less bad than it was. And that's the typical thing. And then, so they won't talk about an issue. If they do talk about an issue, they try and couch it. And then what they never do is give a resolution that's in any way meaningful or substantive. They never actually wrestle with the thing that they bring up. And someone in the comments saying, mad respect to this guy for bringing it up, but fair play to him. Yeah, he's able to do that. But he just says, well, my companion was nice to me and that fixed it. Does that actually help any of the Black members who may still be struggling with this today?
No, and that's why I think it's audacious to quote Martin Luther King. When we know what the church's history was with supporting those rights, and then how the church dragged its heels to extend anything like sort of equality to if you believe in eternal marriage, to those blessings. Could you imagine not being able to be sealed to your husband, to your wife? Can you imagine having children and thinking we will be separated for eternity because we can't go to the temple? That is just the most painful thing you can possibly do to somebody, if that is their belief, if that's the church that they think is true. And there was never any sort of, oh yeah, we got this wrong. It was, oh, we're going to just change it from here on in. And we're not going to explain to people converting to the church why there may be members of their own community that go, really? You're going to join the Mormons? Really? Nobody told him. He was a kid and nobody told him. And he gets sent out on his mission and nobody tells him. And to find out in that way is brutal. And thank goodness he did have a nice companion. He might have had somebody who was awful to him, but fortunately he had somebody who was kind and caring about it.
And another point Doug Vincent makes, they were vehemently opposed to interracial marriage as well, and still opposed to sort of mixed race marriage up until like 2013. There was an
and that's what I say. So when I joined in '88, there was definitely, opposed to interracial marriage. I hope
he's in an interracial marriage. About that.
Is he?
Elder Johnson's in an his wife's white. So
right, okay.
Again, there's it strikes me as similar.
He would have had a really tough time. He would have
had a really tough time, and in a similar way that Camille N. Johnson, I think it is, tries to kind of sugarcoat her way through and go, oh, well, I went out to work, my husband went out to work, and we did that. And she ignores the fact that the explicit teachings to women at that time from the prophet were that she should not be going out to work. And she's there trying to act like, oh, well, everyone had a choice to do that. That's fine. Doesn't work. And similarly, he will have been going against the flow of the church there to marry his wife. Absolutely. He would have been going against prophetic counsel in order to do that. Because they've still not fully got rid of the counsel not to now, really.
No.
I'm not aware of any explicit repudiation of that advice.
That's right. And that's why you still get some weird and wonderful teachings in Sunday school classes and people saying all sorts of crazy stuff depending on when they joined.
Speaking of crazy stuff, should we get on to D. Todd Christofferson and the death march that he...
oh, my goodness.
Yeah. There you go.
If I say this talk was a car crash, I wouldn't be far off the truth, would I?
No. It was an accident in Lesotho killing 16 young women and leaders of the Maputo branch.
But let's make it an inspirational story.
Yeah. Book of Mormon repeats teaches that if you keep the commandments, you will prosper. Did that happen for the South African saints? Don't know what Peter means by that. No idea. But what he did do, Christofferson, was talk about your body being sacred. And he started to then go into for the strength of youth. He was reaffirming that physical intimacy is only between married man and woman, calling people to repent of sexual immorality. And it felt like a weird thing for him to bring up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I thought so as well. It didn't segue with the story that he'd started the talk with and the sort of build-up that he'd got there. But yeah, for the strength of youth being quoted, I thought for the strength of youth was kind of going by the by. I didn't think we were going hard and heavy on that anymore because the standards have changed and we've got the new, skimpy garments and all the rest of it. I just thought we'd kind of said, okay, well, for the strength of youth is all about being nice people, not so much about policing what people wear. And yeah.
So Peter got up some side by sides because they were quoting.
Okay, is this the latest version of it? Because I haven't seen this one. Treat your body. Go to the spa.
So I didn't really have tons to say about him, but please, what Peter was saying here is that those South African saints didn't prosper.
No, they didn't.
They were probably keeping the commandments because they died. And that's not great. And that's,
absolutely. But yeah, I thought maybe it's a dog whistle for where things are going to go with the strength of youth. Now we've got Oaks coming in. Maybe Christofferson understands what's going to go on in the background because he referred to the. Let me just check my notes here. I'm sure he talked about. Yes, he talked about family of proclamation. He talked about where can you find God's commandments in the family of proclamation to the world and in for the strength of youth. Mm-hmm. So I think that is him saying these are going to be canonized.
Yeah.
in some way, for them to then become God's commandments, and then talking about, you know, what you can and can't do, and not arousing other people.
But then
no touching your private parts and no arousing other people. And then he uses that scripture about being tossed to and fro. And I was thinking, oh, stop with your tossing. You're arousing people.
I personally apologize to all those that I have aroused. Yeah. It's such a strange thing. He talked about the family proclamation, brought that up because everyone's saying it's because it's 30th anniversary. I think it's also to do with the fact that Dan H. Oakes just really likes it. It's his special favorite thing, it would seem.
Oh, yeah,
he talked about the traditional family quite a bit. But yeah, it's a good point here. Massive missed opportunity to advise the youth of consent. You know, he's there talking about sex abstinence, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't have a chance. But then, you know, someone's saying don't need consent if everyone's celibate. Absolutely, you still need to understand consent, because not everyone is going to. Yeah, people do things without consent to people who are trying to be celibate. That's what I'll say to that. So people, if they can understand, if the youth can understand consent properly, then they can understand when to apply it and when to say no to someone, so that bad things don't happen to them.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
For the strength of youth would be a whole lot better if there was a whole section in there about consent, and a whole section in there about how to say no, and that it's okay to say no, because as a church, it's emotive language, but we are groomed to say yes. You say yes, and then you figure out how to make it work. You say yes, you say yes, you say yes. And then when somebody chooses to abuse that, and we know from Floodlit, time and time again, those positions of power are abused, often with the youth, sometimes with primary children. There's a whole discussion. It's not about, are you wearing a skirt that's a little bit too short or 2 pairs of earrings instead of 1? It's about, you didn't learn how to advocate for yourself, and you certainly didn't learn about how to say no and how to stand up for yourself.
Now, did you catch this, Ruth? Did he really say that masturbation is a sin?
He did.
He did, yeah. I just wanted to check that I hadn't just made that up in my own head.
It's a nice thing to chat about on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd, for that. Before we go to Sister Spanos, and we move on to her, I would like to invite you all, as any good Mormon would, to consider the links in the description to consider supporting this channel and becoming a monthly supporter, or subscribing if you want to see more of these shows, and hitting the like button, because if you like this, you should probably tell the internet and tell me, and yeah, that's great. This show is made possible by supporters like you in the audience, and I'm very grateful for those channel members. Super chats are available if you want to make sure I definitely see your comment in the chat. But yeah, that's me shaking my cup for shekels. Done. Let's get on to Sister Spanos and her talk that was addressing directly the youth. So when Peter and I were talking about how they don't really tend to talk to the youth in the primary very often, we got here a direct talk to the youth, and a little bit of a video treat for people as to what is a prophet, because she actually laid out very clearly what a prophet is, and I think we could have some fun dissecting it, Ruth.
Start at the beginning. What is a prophet? A prophet is a man whom God has called to speak for him.
Speak for him, not to him, not with him, for him, on his behalf, as though God was speaking. Very important.
There are prophets on the earth today, just as there were in ancient times. Prophets are seers and revelators. That means they can see what others cannot see, and they can prophesy of future events. They can also prepare us for calamities. Prophets receive commandments and revelations from God.
Now, that's interesting, because we had Quinton O'Cook on the Church News podcast saying that we didn't get a revelation that COVID was going to happen. So maybe they can prepare us for these things, but they
choose not to.
Or they certainly didn't warn us. Maybe you could argue they did prepare us by creating home-centered church. maybe, or whatever. But
Yeah.
the more effective way to prepare people would have been to warn them to, buy face masks, toilet paper, and hand sanitizer.
Yeah, you can't have the two things at the same time without there being a real dissonance, which is we don't value life on this earth. It's a harsh thing to say, but we don't. It's all about the next life. Because if we really cared about, if the God of Mormonism really cared about mortality and our mortal existence, there would have been angels at that church stopping that guy. There'd have been people protecting people from COVID. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many miracles that could happen that don't happen. And we can sit comfortably with that going, it's fine, we're going to be together in the next life. Nelson lived to 101. He could have done a Noah and lived into his 600s, 700s if we needed him to. But we don't care because it's fine. We're going to see him in the next life. It's all about the next life. It's all about the next life. You've lost a baby. It's fine. You'll see them in the next life. Or those 16 children have just died on a bus. It's fine. We'll get to be with them together. And your challenge is to figure out why you lived and serve other people now because you're going to get to see them in the next life. We are a doomsday cult, as horrible to say, but we're all about the second coming. It's not about helping now, because if we were about seeing in ways that are going to help mortality, then they've let us down dreadfully. If it's about preparing us for mortal events, then they've let us down dreadfully, time and time again.
Yeah.
I think since we've had Noah was the last one.
Who did a real good job of preparing people. And even then, he kind of prepped his own family and kept them safe because everyone else kind of had to bite it, really. Caitlin says, prophets and seers and revelations, we don't know exactly when they are speaking for God. That is the other issue. I do want to see that billboard at some point inside the conference center that says currently speaking as a man or currently speaking from God. Love to see that made available to us all. Let's throw more of her stuff on stage. Quorum of the 12 decisions must be unanimous, was the claim she made, which makes it very interesting then how the priesthood ban was lifted, because we know that certain individuals were kind of
kept out the country,
sent
on tour.
Yes. She said, if we fail to teach our children the saving truth of the gospel, the world won't do it. The world's wickedness is growing, but the Church of Jesus Christ and his kingdom are stronger than ever. Zion is putting on its beautiful garments and Christ's throne will not fall. Really?
I hate that rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
It's so damaging.
Yeah. Go on. Tell me what. Tell us why. Tell us why.
Because the world's wickedness is growing. It's a doomsday cult thing to say. It's them and us. You are the world. You live in this world. And you know what? You could be a force for good in this world that you live in. And if you stopped looking around you and seeing other and started seeing people to care about and put your arm around, then you'd realize that the world is not becoming more and more wicked. It's actually, we'd have more exposure to events that are happening around the world because we see news, 24/7. But the world is not a more wicked place. We just know about more dreadful events, tragedies, unhappiness, wars, political upheaval that are happening, and we're aware of it. But we could be doing something about those things. We choose not to. Instead, we're like, okay, it's wicked, and therefore second coming is coming. So let's go insular. Let's just go to the temple and not worry about helping.
Yeah.
That's not what Jesus would do.
No, but it is always the Lord that chooses his servants, which is just a little kick in the face to anyone who's like, maybe Dan Lake Chokes might not be a good call for profit. She's like, well, it's not up to you, is it? So don't even bother voting. Don't even bother getting involved in common consent because the Lord chooses them. And that's fine. The Lord may choose them, but then the members get to ratify that choice according to scripture. Jade says, I don't typically use the word cult, but Doomsday High Control Group doesn't really roll off the tongue. It's fair enough, isn't it? Okay, Mr. Eyring, who I swear for the past 5 talks of his has been like, okay, this is my last one, I promise, I'm probably going to die now. And then just doesn't. He just keeps on trucking, this guy, which, fair enough. Again, this is quite an old photo of him now. He speaks while sat. He doesn't go to the pulpit goes to him, in the same way the mountain moves to Muhammad. And he made an interesting quote, or one that I wrote down, about talking about the sort of the sojourn of Moroni in the wilderness, holding on to the gold plates, or Mormon, I forget which one it was. Talking about, and he talks about it was writing of it was a book written to the people, including the descendants of the people who were trying to kill him. So he's made a very clear line there that the descendants of the Lamanites are the Native Americans, which is something the church has got vague about, but it's interesting to hear him just kind of rocking that out there still.
He's a really old guy, and that's what he was taught, and that's what he's going to hold on to.
Yeah. Oh, also, sorry, Spanhouse's talk, she starts by talking about that unnamed woman, right, with the prophet Elijah.
Oh, don't you love that? I'm going to quote from a woman in the scriptures, but we don't even know her name.
So we're just going to call her the woman of this town. I can't remember what the town was. But it's talking about the prophet Elisha. The prophet Elisha is the same prophet that set 2 bears on a group of children for calling them bold. We don't need to say anymore. We can then carry on with Iring. But very importantly, the prophet Elisha, as lovely as this woman was to him, and she was lovely to him even though she didn't know he was the prophet, and then she discovered he was the prophet, and it was great. This is the same man that when kids call him bold, he sets bears on them.
Yeah, so if he comes to your house, you better blooming well set him up a spare guest room and feed him dinner, because otherwise,
Otherwise, he might set wolves on you or something.
You're going to have a Goldilocks moment.
Then Iring's statement that the trials you face aren't evidence that God doesn't love you. They're evidence that he loves you enough to refine and strengthen you. Those trials are evidence.
Said every abuser ever.
Exactly.
I hit you because I love you.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's a really terrible dynamic to be setting up. Many people, when they're dealing with the problem of evil, will talk about the inevitability of evil, or they will talk about the fact that evil is an essential part of life. But I don't think many people necessarily like to frame it as no, the evils in life and the problems in life, not only are they unavoidable, they're actually a sign that God loves you. It sounds really abusive.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I thought as well, and I get it, he's really old, but he had to reach back in his mind to a time when he went through a situation which was a bit of a trial to him, and he had to go all the way back to being at college and studying physics and maths and feeling a little bit discouraged and a little bit overwhelmed because it was a bit hard. And then he felt like quitting, so he had a prayer, and then he worked a bit harder and he didn't quit. And that's the story arc. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's probably 70 years ago. 70 years ago, that was the last time he went through something that he thinks will be a relatable trial. And the miracle that happened was he worked a little bit harder and didn't quit.
It's hard being Iring, isn't it? It must be difficult. It must be difficult being the nephew of... Well, actually, Iring is the 4th in a line of nephews going back quite far. He's a proper Nepo baby, is Iring.
Yes, he is.
He comes from Mexican polygamists, I think, as well. As in,
the phrase that he used
went down to Mexico to practice. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yeah.
He says, I learned that my struggle with physics was a gift from the Lord. I learned that he could do impossible. He learned that he could do impossible things, like study physics. Surely, defying physics would be the impossible thing. Let's make the apple go up rather than down.
Have you tried to study physics at university? Because I had to do some physics at university, and my goodness, is it difficult? So maybe it is an impossible thing, and maybe it is a miracle. Any physicists in the chat, just keep to yourselves, right? We know you're clever.
Okay. Well, I'm glad he found it challenging, but he needs to, be brave and push on through these things. It's studying for a reason. It's meant to be learning new things, and that's hard.
Yeah, and we should have a good approach to it. He quoted Paul at the end, the whole "I've fought the good fight, I've run the race, I've finished the course," whatever the quote is. And it again seemed like a goodbye. but then they all do because he's old and frail. And I think him and Holland are both just like, okay, well, I need to end on something because they want their McConkie moment. McConkie's final testimony is legendary because it was this big pulpit thumping testimony that he left with, and then done, right? He was out. But these guys, I think Holland's last talk before this conference, he really tried to thump the pulpit, and now he's still around, and I think he's losing the strength to do it now. So he's going with whispering Amazing Grace instead, and hoping that will be the thing he'll be remembered for. Unfortunately, yeah.
This is why we need emeritus status, so that they can just bow out gracefully.
Mm-hmm. We've got someone in the comments working on their numerical methods homework with this on in a different tab. All right, showing off while doing numerical methods. I love it. That, but good on you, Grant. I'm glad you get physics. Okay, right. I think we had a closing prayer from Dean Martin Guri. We've had a lot of sort of black representation in this conference. We've had a lot of the black leaders of the church stepping up. I haven't done a number on it, but it's been noticeable in a predominantly white church, and it's been very good to see.
Yeah.
And then
I noticed that they did say they had to, the choir was joined by members from different countries around the world. So basically they're sort of padding out the numbers with people with perhaps more interesting lineage.
There's a white British guy who's singing with the choir currently. I like that they kind of bring these people in. And they had a multicultural choir last night. They all had their little flag pins on stuff. They're trying. And we do have to give them points for trying. The qualifications and careers list of everyone that spoke. Dan H. Oaks is a lawyer.
Oh, interesting.
Jihan Sam Wong was an MBA. Jeffrey R. Holland did English and American Studies. James Evanson was a dentist, because James E. Evanson is the most dentist name I think I've ever seen. Ulysses Suarez was an MBA. Peter Johnson was an accountant. Ditosh Christopherson was a lawyer. Sister Spenhouse was an early years educator, art and interior design. Henry Biaring was a lawyer, and Martin Guri is a mechanical engineer. So again, there's no blue collar jobs here, unless you count dentists.
I'm not seeing any fishermen.
No fishermen. No, none of that. No, oil rig workers. No miners. No electricians, plumbers, bricklayers. None of the.
It's only that, isn't it?
All just independently wealthy individuals. Because that's what you need to be in order to get through the first few levels of Mormon leadership.
Well, I can't remember who it was that talked about prosperity, and how we would see that. It might have been him, actually. Go back through my notes, but yeah, essentially how we will see blessings. Well, some of it is prosperity gospel, and how the church shows that is only elevating people to positions of power who outwardly would seem to demonstrate that the Lord has blessed them monetarily, rather than being brave and elevating somebody who's just a good person.
Yeah, good person with a good knowledge of the scriptures and a good sort of theology, and just theological understanding, if not formal training. Yeah, but there we are. Who are we, Ruth? But an excommunicated man and a woman of all things.
And a woman who, Tom what
Trails. That is a name I've not seen in a little while. And apologies if I haven't noticed that you've been in the chat, Tom. Thank you very much for your support. And glad that you value thinking about Mormonism. But Tom has been a viewer of the channel and a supporter of the channel for a very long time, and it's great to see him here. But it's great to see all of you here. Thank you very much. For watching, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have one more session to go. Can Russell M. Nelson beat Jesus Christ in a contest of who can be quoted more? Time will tell. So to make sure that you find out, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button to tell YouTube that you enjoyed this, and I will see you at the next session. Bye, everyone.